Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up again. In case you weren't aware, we're currently running a podcast. My name is Adam Harlow, and I've been a life coach for several years. I got into it after a late diagnosis and doing a lot of research about neurodivergence, and now I'm trying to help as many people as I can. In doing so, I've now done deep dives on all kinds of things, and one of the people that has helped me more than anybody else is my wonderful friend, Jeanette. Hi, Jeanette.
Hey, Adam.
How are we doing today?
I am doing awesome. As always, I'm happy to meet with you. And you just really flattered me and touched my heart because we've had some wonderful conversations. And that's kind of why we've started this podcast, that we think they might be useful. If we're struggling with it, other people out there are struggling with it. Our relationship, our friendship brings both of us to light. And part of it is because demographically we're quite different. I am a neophyte coach. I'm behind that in Adam, but I spent years in mental health and addiction services. And the last 7 years was delivering dialectical behavior therapy to that population. So I have that background to draw in, and that kind of embellishes our conversations now and again. And I'm happy to be the newbie in the coaching world and also to be offering these podcasts, hoping to open the door to better conversations for people.
And you're an incredible human being. And I just wanted to add that, yes, you have been in the mental health industry for quite some time, but that's because you have master's degrees in doing so, which you did not throw out there, which I thought was very sweet and very disarming. However, you have spent lots of time in the academic world. You have studied
Yes.
an immense amount to dive into this. There was a reason that you were so successful in helping people get past their stuff. And so I have no master's degree. I took some courses and used a lot of my own personal experiences, but Jeanette here is absolutely academically above and beyond where I sit. I'm 42. Jeanette is of an age, and we have, we have our differences, and yet we get along. We see things very much the same, but we also open a lot of questions and thought process for each other. And so today we were hoping to take a look at our sense of self, which is
Mm.
ironic because you just introduced yourself and missed a very large aspect of it. So our sense of self versus how others see us. And so just out of curiosity, considering we just kind of went through it, how do you see yourself, Jeanette? What do you see when you think of you?
Oh, quite a question. Well, one of the things, I'll start with sort of the coaching aspect, and then I'll get into where I am personally on that.
Please
The
do.
coaching aspect, as you know, the sense of self, um, and first of all, there's an ideal self. This is the one none of us ever reach, right? The angel Jeanette. I've never reached angelic proportions. And then there's that self that we perceive. And we can either be quite close to how our ideal self, or we fall short of the mark. And that's where we'll often get into trouble. And that's where I've worked with a lot of clients in terms of sort of a skewed sense of self either way. So for myself, I do identify with my values very much. And I also identify, like right now, I'm in my retirement years, and Adam nicely skirted the fact that I'm 66 years old, which makes me a level 6.6, which is how I introduce myself to children, and they get very impressed. And I'll say, "I'm a grandma, you know," and they'll go, "Oh, I have a grandma?" And I'll say, "I'll bet you do." And that's like a big in with kids. So I'm enjoying this time of my life, and my sense of self is all around what my values are: love, commitment, my family. I also value health. I'm pretty active, that kind of thing. I value, obviously, education, and I value the human spirit. So that's why I'm continuing with coaching, because I love, it's just in my DNA, as it is in yours, to see people succeed, right? And
And
coaching goes
grow.
way towards that. And I'll wrap this little bit of it that's about me is when I look back, that's where I've run into trouble with myself, is where I've set myself some really high bars and not met them. And now I realize they were probably unrealistic.
Mm,
And, the superwoman thing, ideal, I'm not that, and never will be. So once you try on your clay feet a little bit, your sense of self starts to come more into a more clear view, right? So
yeah.
yeah, what about you at where you're at in life right now?
Interestingly enough, my sense of self has been right now. I was gonna say it has been a roller coaster, but I'm still on said roller coaster. Being
All right.
diagnosed at 38 with severe ADHD meant that I had to change who I thought that I was. I had to separate my symptoms from me, which meant that I kind of had to rebuild a new me. I had to find a new sense of values, set new boundaries for um, what I am and am not okay with, even a new core sense of uh, moral values, things that I used to bypass because I wasn't able to think about the consequences about
Mhm.
other people, and it makes me very sad now to think that there was almost
Mhm.
like a lack of empathy that old Adam was missing, that I now am absolutely flooded with. I've always cared about other people. I always want the best for everybody around me, and I didn't recognize the consequences of me being in their equation. And I'm just going to quickly. You said that there's an angelic version of yourself that you're never going to get to. Well, from this side of the computer, I see it. So whether or not you do, I just can't imagine a better version of you. I know that I'm a kind, empathetic person,
Yes.
and I have luckily I've had the opportunity to learn how to listen, which for somebody who has ADHD, any of you out there listening, you know how hard it would be to sit down and just listen to somebody for an hour to pick up their shifts in body, particular uh, words that they use, and kind of use that to go into introspection. We are naturally inclined to jump in with jokes or metaphors, or we are
Mhm.
incredibly uncomfortable with silence. And learning how to be a coach kind of forced me to be not comfortable with silence, but to deal with my discomfort in silence. Because if you're speaking to somebody about something real and there is silence, they are actively thinking about the question or the conversation that you're having. So filling that space really, it just, it ruins their thought. You're interrupting their thought process, and getting in the way of anybody's introspection is not ideal. That's not how you help somebody best get through anything. So yeah, that's me. I try and be as empathetic and as aware as I can possibly be. I know for sure that I have blind spots, and I am aware of my faults, which is a, I'm going to say is a human trait, but is a, I just learned about a different kind of there's CBT, and then there's spec. expect something where people with ADHD have higher expectations of themselves, but also beat themselves up more than other people, and that becomes a very difficult
It
thing to
is.
deal with.
Yeah.
So that's fun. I'm learning about that this week. I should have written that down somewhere, but I'm constantly learning about me and reiterating my values and how to set boundaries and how others see me. In truth, I don't have any. I have no idea. Um,
Interesting.
it's not something that ironically, it's not something that I've given a lot of thought to. I used to. I used to care very much what other people
Right.
thought
Right.
of me. And then I recognized that there's a bunch of stuff here that I have to work on for me. And all of a sudden, how others saw me was less important. Um, in truth, I hope that what they see is authentic. And that's kind of the only word to me that is important at this point in my life is I hope they see somebody that is real, that is authentic, that is without a front, without a face, without a facade, just me.
Right. And that's, see, that in itself, although I would say, Adam, might be a bit of a high bar. And I think you should start asking people what they um see in you, that you might have a little trouble seeing for yourself. Um and we all, you've heard of masks. We all put on a mask, right? And so to be truly authentic, I think, is very difficult, except for maybe we're in our quietest moments or with the people that truly love and accept us the most. Then we can kind of drop the masks. But they're there for a reason also, to protect us. When I go to, um, when I'm with my kids, I've got my mom mask on. Right.
Yeah.
When I'm with my partner, I have that mask on. I went to the bank yesterday. I put on my businessy mask and I actually dressed to match. I actually dress pretty, I don't know, sometimes I think I look like a hobo, but when you're out in the garden a lot, that's how you dress. But anyway, so when we say sense of self, it can be a very interesting enterprise to answer that question.
Mine was mostly feeling based.
Mostly feelings based. Absolutely. But then, okay, as I've deep dove in my own life, and as you know, I'm a student of Buddhism, which is not a
Mhm.
religion, it is a practice. But I will say to you and to anybody who might listen, as I read, as um, Adam said, I am fairly educated. I trained under the science practitioner mode, which means I have to be scientific about things I say and interventions that I may in the past have treated people with. So it has to fit empirically, or you don't do it. Anyway, so personality comes up a lot, and we often mistake our true self or our personality. So I actually took in my undergraduate a whole course on personality, and you can remember this acronym: CANOE, or ocean, which is openness, conscientiousness, pardon me, oh dear, I'm going to come back to that because I'm trying to say three things at one time. But anyways, and you can look it up online. You can take personality questionnaires all over the internet. Some are better, some are not. We can leave some good links for people. But and personality is fairly fixed according to science thus far. Like, we're born with it like a quiet little baby, toddler, more introspective, will probably be that way as an adult. We're born with
Okay.
the traits, And then as we grow up, that cements into our personality. However, let for fun, let's take me. And then, here I am born into a white, Western, West European family, and raised according to BC education standards and so forth. What if I'd been born into, say, a family in Zimbabwe?
Would you still be?
The me I am right now, or
Hmm.
China, or well, anywhere else. That would quite obviously affect my personality and my growth and my attitudes and how I
Mhm.
ask who I am,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
So it's not as fixed as we think it is. Like you said, in your past, because of your upbringing and all that, although you had a sense of compassion and empathy for others, your upbringings clouded that for you. But now, as you've come into your adulthood and had your own education, your own mind, you now have that. That's one of your defining attributes that I just love about you. It's so natural. So, who is Adam? Was it the guy that, who cares? Or is it you now as you sit?
And is it forever growing? There was something you brought up, traits versus personality, and I think, like in my head, there is a conversation to be had there. But I have an anecdote, if I may, that throws out how I see it. So I was born in Etobicoke in Ontario,
Mhm.
in a not very wealthy neighborhood, and I remember going to kindergarten. I don't remember going to kindergarten, but my mom tells this story. My sister and I went to junior kindergarten, and we came home, and we were both crying. And mom asked what happened, and we said that we got picked on. And she asked why. What did you get picked on? And our answer was that we looked different than the other kids. Um, we were the only two white kids in the school,
Oh,
and
okay.
um, and there were multiple times where bullying against me
Mhm.
became physical.
Yeah.
And the story that she has is that one day, I was pushed off my bike, and she watched it, and there was a fence was right there, and my bike thankfully stopped me, but one of the rusty steel parts of the top of the fence stopped just as it punctured my neck. So had I fallen further, I would have been in very serious physical harm. And my mother walked down the street and knocked on the door of the house that was my bike was on the lawn of this house, and she spoke to the parent, and the parent said, she said, your son stole my son's bike. And her response was, no, he didn't. And she realized then that perhaps this wasn't the best neighborhood for us to be raised in. And I can tell you, if I had stayed and we had gone through the school system
Yeah.
there, who I would be now would be drastically different from who I am now.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I can say that a lot of that would come from defense mechanisms. I would need to have built walls upon walls of defense mechanisms. I would probably have had to learn to be violent to protect myself. There would be, I would be a very my values, my morals would probably be different had I been raised in that environment. So when I think of traits, you're born with traits, but can your life experiences bury those underneath mechanisms?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the, like I was just giving an example, but you've got a specific example that you're aware of, that your personality. So I'll just return for a minute to the personality, because now my brain is kicked in. But this called, if people want to take tests, it's called the Big Five. So personality is being studied way up the yin yang. So it's on openness. So, and it's scale. So either you're like that person where everything's out their mouth and they share, to that person who's very close lipped, very not open, and also open to new ideas and new. Conscientiousness is just what you think, the person who's very meticulous about what they do versus somebody who just, whatever, throw it together. Here's one that I found cropped up quite a lot with people is extroversion versus introversion.
Mm.
And I had people that were pathologizing themselves. Oh, I'm just awful. And I just fall apart if I have to go out. And then we'd look at them and they're an introvert, right? Which is not an illness. Introversion is simply the need to have quiet and solitude, to regroup, to go do what it is that you do.
There's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you if you're an introvert. Zero. Agreeableness is just that exactly. How well do you get along with others versus how well you don't? A contrarian, for example. And then there's the big one, and this is the one we all kind of flit around on a little bit, is neuroticism. So somebody who has anxiety disorder will test out fairly high on neuroticism. They worry about everything. Everything's going to come to a bad end. They themselves are a bad person versus somebody who's doesn't worry about anything. Now, the interesting thing, you think, oh, that sounds nice. No, the far end of neuroticism scale would be something like psychopathy, somebody
Really?
who's a psychopath or sociopath. They don't give two hoots. So no emotionality, right? But the interesting thing, that's a lot, therapy is sort of moving the dial on those a little bit. So you
Yeah.
can change your personality some. So again, it comes back to that same question. Okay, so say I'm high on neuroticism, I'm far too agreeable, I have no boundaries. Go into therapy and we tidy all that up a little bit, get a better sense of self. Am I the same or am I different?
Mm. And that's a wonderful thing to look at because both therapy and coaching wanders into it's very difficult for a human being to grow if they are not aware of where they sit. It's very
Exactly.
difficult to address a problem if you haven't acknowledged the problem. If you aren't even aware of the issue, then it's very difficult to overcome. Um, which is why coming to an expert is very helpful. It does help you grow. It brings into light some sometimes uncomfortable questions that you hadn't thought to ask yourself until you got into a place where somebody was really listening to you. And that's where I've recognized that in our day-to-day conversations with our family and our friends, they exacerbate whatever we're going through. Yes, I understand you're mad at this person and that makes sense and they did this and that kind of like it magnifies, it expands. Whereas you come to see myself or yourself and there we don't have any emotional attachment to it, so it's more of a what ma- what made you feel that way? Or to begin with, how did that make you feel?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then why do you think you felt that way? And then, well, the next time it comes up, is there something you can do to address that before it gets out of hand, whether it's setting boundaries or whether it's, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where you take a minute and rearrange your thoughts instead of responding immediately with emotion, which, from what we're speaking about, are you changing your personality or are you changing your traits?
Right. Yeah. So you're right. Like behavior and personality, people mix them up. I'm sure you've heard, and maybe I've said it myself. I don't quite recall if I have, but maybe I'm not aware of it. But people just say, I am who I am. They just have to accept me. That's the way I am. And like,
Yep.
well, I'm here to tell you that it can be quite fluid who you are, and if you want to change it, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I've come across the same thing, and in a
Mm.
non-negative way, for those that are watching, it's active stunted growth. You have decided, now this is the scary part, if you've decided at 23 that this is who you are, and there's no budging, regardless of what life throws at you. There's no growth in empathy. There's no growth in introspection. There's no growth in, and at some point you will find yourself in your mid 40s or 50s or 60s recognizing that the world may have passed you by, that people that you knew have grown out of that. They've become parents or grandparents. They've expanded their life experiences and learned new things. And to actively stay in that I am who I am is, can be detrimental. And as a fun side note, one of the first tattoos I wanted to get was Popeye, because when I was a kid, he was my hero, because his whole thing was, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. And
Yes.
I just wanted to be okay with who I was and the way that I was. But that's because of my own personal struggles with the things that were getting in my way. I'm an epileptic with ADHD, and I had no idea. So my struggles were not like the struggles of other people. And I just wanted to be okay with that for a very long time. And
Yeah.
then I came to acknowledge, I came to see
Yeah.
what was actually going on. And at that point, it switched entirely. And I'm not who I am, and that's all that I am. I can be more.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful story, Adam. I love that. Because like taking our topic and now looking at it from a Freudian perspective, um, our sense of self would come from ego.
Mm,
So, according to Freudian psychology, you can draw out an iceberg, and ego sits on the very tippy top. That's the part we see and we know again. And then, but underneath is the whole subconscious that's actually driving the show, right? And therapy and coaching help, well, in part, you said it exactly, takes the unconscious and brings it to the conscious. So for you, even when you were struggling with the world around you, and you had adults around you as a young man that didn't know how to guide you and protect you and let you come into your own, you had to do it yourself. But that sense of compassion was in there, and the minute it got some air to breathe, it came out. And that was unconscious to you when you're, or let's put it, there's also the pre-conscious. You probably had some idea. You're like, I don't like that when kids hurt other kids, or I don't like that when the teacher yells. I remember sitting in classrooms just, oh, the teacher's yelling at Joey again, and Joey's poor. And I would just suffer because it was my little child sense of compassion for that
mm.
kid who was getting it in the ear, right? And then as I get into my adulthood, I realize that is part of who I am, but it's not entirely who I am.
Just a trait.
It's just one of my traits, right? Isn't it interesting when we just talked about the big five personality model? People do bear in mind, if you take one of those tests and see where you are on some of these scales, and then you may want to tip some of them to bring yourself into the authenticity that you want for yourself. It does not measure compassion.
Mm.
It does not measure courage. Actually, doesn't measure intellect, although there's some more to lines on those. Tastes, sense of humor. That's one thing I love about you. You have a fabulous sense of humor, and you can take those big five personality tests all day, and they will not reveal that about you.
Yeah. I'm now I have to find one, which again we'll put the link in. We've had the same conversation about IQ tests.
Oh, right.
They can test all kinds of stuff, but they do not test your empathy, your compassion, your
Yes.
sense of justice. They don't. There are gigantic gaps in IQ tests, which again, as scientifically, I get that it would be very difficult to smash them all into a singular test, but I'm also hard pressed to think of something you could take that would measure your compassion, your sense of humor, your empathy, your sense of justice, your morals, as it were.
There are tests. What I would do is, for anybody out there, is just Google them. You want to put in questionnaire or test, and then what it is you're trying to test.
Mm,
Humor. Interesting thing. So I grew up in a family where humor was really tops, right? Like you could make almost anything funny. And years later in my psychology learnings, apparently uh, it's an adaptive coping mechanism. Like we all know a lot of people like Ricky Gervais or um, these great comedians have had tragic backgrounds and they cover it all up with humor. And I remember having that little moment of, oh, yeah, okay. Because of a lot of my background is my parents grew up in the war during Scotland, and then they come over to Canada, and there was just kind of hardship, and we didn't have much, and that kind of thing went on. And so, but humor was definitely a panacea and a way of coping with our lives.
I have a friend who does voice work, and is in he lives in LA, and he is friends with lots of comedians. And he's told me on multiple occasions that the saddest people that you could meet are a group of comedians. Put them in a room together, and I'm not saying this is true for all comedians. Just this is just one person's
Y-
perspective, but um, the self-deprecating humor,
Yes,
that is a defense mechanism. And while there are jokes,
absolutely.
that stems from something. And he's told me multiple times that uh, that some of the funniest people that you will meet are underneath some of the saddest people
Yeah.
that you will meet. And this sounds, I don't know how this sounds, but good good for comedians for finding a way to turn their pain into joy for other people without it being painful to anybody. Uh, that is an absolute gift to humanity. I hope it doesn't cost them anything. I'm sure it costs them something, but I
I
hope it doesn't cost them. I hope that the ability to recognize that what they're giving far outweighs the cost that they're paying in order to do so. Because I've been
Mhm.
at a comedy show and having 300 people laugh is it's infectious. There's a vibration that runs through it. You feel
Mhm. Mhm.
connected to everybody. It is an absolute gift to be able to tell stories in a way that just makes us all giggle. And yeah, it makes me sad that that might be true, but it also makes me very happy because there are lots of other ways and lots of other coping and defense mechanisms that are not nearly as giving, as healthy, as I'm not sure what the word is, but um, can be positive, can come out
Absolutely.
as a positive.
Yeah. Another thing that the personality tests don't measure and that you have in spades is resilience, which is the ability to thrive despite adversity. going
Something.
back to the Freudian lens to look at our sense of self, you're right. Like, we all talk about coping mechanisms, maladapted. Like, everybody knows drinking is not a good coping mechanism for whatever in our lives, stress or whatever, these things. But so Freud outlined, I think there's 8 of them in Freudian psychology, such as denial. We know about that one.
Yep.
Transference, that of I have anger problem, I just pick it up in everybody else but myself. And the but there was one he did say was healthy, as you just said, and it's sublimation.
And what's
So
sublimation?
sublimation in literally just means to change. We sublimate something. We take
Oh,
it from this a lump of coal to a lump of gold. And when people sublimate, for example, in Powell River here, we have women that have suffered breast cancer, but they go in the dragon boats to raise money for breast cancer survivors. That's
lovely.
sublimation. They took a bad situation, sublimated into something positive. You've done that in spades. You're the poster child. You got these diagnoses that could have rocked you back on your butt, and probably did for a little bit. You rejiggered yourself, you went through your process, and now you're going, hey, I'm going to take my experience and use it to help others.
Yeah, that was pretty much the core of where I started here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, was to
So
try and
you
help
reach
other people.
sublimation, which is a very high order of healing. Some people might say, yeah, okay, I got ADD, seizure disorder. I'll take the meds and I'll just go back to what I was doing. And that's fine. That's beautiful, right? They'll be healthy, good. But sublimation is that reaching in and extracting meaning and purpose
Mm,
from what, and like you say, some comedians go, you know what, I'll let others laugh at this.
yeah, almost kind of like integrating it into your personality. It for
Sure.
me and mine in particular, it was a diagnosis. So, um,
Mhm.
and again, good for people that have the ability to take the meds and kind of continue down the
Yeah.
line. I did deep dives, and the further I went, the more I recognized how much of this comes from. It's not it's not a me thing. It's blockages of neurons in my brain and with the pathways that
Mhm.
I've got.
Mhm.
There's things that come up, and recognizing that these are, once I'm aware of them, these are things that I can deal with, that I can change. The stuff that I don't like, I can change. And the stuff that I do like, I can appreciate, because the stuff that I do like, that's a core part of my personality that I get to keep. And the way to know that is introspection, is to really take a look at what it is and where it comes from. And I know for me, I still to this day I take my medication, and every day I think it's going to go away. I'm going to take my pills and I'm not going to have any of these hurdles that I have to jump over. And it's not true. It doesn't matter what pills you take. It'll get you to, and I have no idea how they get to this number, but 67.8% is how much better it will make you at focusing of starting tasks, is 67.8, which means 30% of you roughly is still going to have hurdles that are different than other people. This medication will not take away, it will not be 100%. It's not going to open the pathways that everybody else has. That's not a thing. You're still going to have systems that you need to lay out in order to do things that other people struggle with. And that, like you said, that's my sublimation. That's where I want to help, is um, helping people understand that you can change. You can look at and change the little things that
Mm.
you have to jump over during the day. And for the record, thank you for saying such wonderful things. I don't often I don't often look back and think, "Good for me." Uh, so hearing you say that feels lovely, and I very much I very much appreciate it, and I do believe that everybody's got their hurdles, and I mean
I
larger in life, not just my brain. Every You cannot go through life without hurdles, and
right.
the people that are able to take those experiences and move into a better place are some of the strongest human beings. That is one of the most admirable traits that I can think of in human beings is the ability to pick yourself up and brush yourself off and find a way to move forward in an it's always going to be a different direction. Some are more productive, some are more positive than others, and I find that to be a wonderfully um, what is the word I'm looking for? It's just it's admirable. I know I already said it, but it makes me feel better as a human knowing that I'm not alone. That other people, that we all have the ability to address the hard things in our life and move it into a positive, to shift it into a better way to look at things, a different way to look at things, and
Absolutely.
things yourself, your relationships, your any of the hurdles that we hit along the way are lessons. They're all lessons in how to be a different person. Good, bad, sideways. Different. It's growth. It's always growth.
Yeah. Personal growth. Yeah. So, do you think we're close to answering that question? Who am I?
I think so. I think so. So now that we've wandered through that, I know my answer is a little bit different. So who are you now?
Me?
Yeah.
I well, okay, where I'm at with that, and I'm going to get a little woo woo, but I believe that I answered a spiritual question for myself over last week, I think. So I'm practicing Buddhism meditation. So when I go deep, deep, deep inside, it's just still and quiet.
Mm,
And that's what I now believe we are. The rest of me is window dressing, that I am a spirit, that I am a spiritual being, that I am came from the light, I am the light. I just learned this morning that the brain actually casts light outside of the skull. They can measure it like photons and whatnot. It's very
really?
interesting. Yeah, so we do cast light. And but then I started to wrestle with, all right, I get that. I'm following Ram Dass right now, spiritual leader of the past, meditating. And I thought, but I still am me, and there's things I want to do and be and accomplish. And so who is that, and how do I am I supposed to cast that off? And the answer is no. The answer was, we are still in a body, and we do have an ego, and we need it.
Mm,
So I still need to be Jeanette, Adam's friend. Then I get with my grandchildren, and now I'm grandma, and I go to the bank, and now I'm business Jeanette. Otherwise, I couldn't exist. I'd just be a jellyfish floating around. So me now, who am I, is that finding that sweet spot between having enough sense of that self, but realizing that I am a spiritual being in a human body.
lovely.
Yeah. So that's really where I am right now. I'm working on it. Work in progress.
Work in progress. Still
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Has yours shifted at all through this conversation a little bit?
Significantly, yeah. Actually,
Oh,
when I started, I thought about when I answered it at the beginning of this. I answered with my favorite traits about me, the things
right.
that I know inherently are me. And like you, I have masks when I go out and I'm social. I am An extrovert, absolutely.
Ah,
You cannot offend me. My sense of humor is it's quick because of my ADHD. I'm allowed to throw out jokes and metaphors and anecdotes as they come, and my stories are fantastic. One day we'll get into them,
okay.
but I'm realizing that as a husband, as a coach, as a friend, these are
Right.
all masks that I put on. And
Yes.
I don't think I'm going to use the term mask anymore because they
Ah,
aren't different from who I am. They are all parts of who I am. I'm not faking when I'm out being friendly and fun and my extroverted self. I'm not faking when I have these tender moments with my wife. I'm not faking when I have my coaching hat on and I'm working with somebody. These are not these are not fake versions of myself. I am all of these things. I am all of my experiences
yeah. And more.
and more and more to come
Yes.
as life continues, so will I. As life changes, so will I. And so,
Yes.
who I am today, who I was an hour ago, is not who I am now. And who I'll be this afternoon is not who I am now. I do believe at this point that it is a continuous, never ending process of growth. And so, I am who I am.
We'll let Popeye have the last word, eh? Why
And
not?
that's all that I am. Right now, I think is the best part
Right.
about the end of that, is I am who I am, and that's
Yes.
all that I am right now. And tomorrow, it will be true tomorrow.
You could not put it any better.
Yeah, that was lovely. That was lovely. And so, I'm gonna ask because it's my favorite thing to do before we take off. So if
Okay.
the last hour we had, was, a book, what would the title of the book be?
Uh, oh, easy. My friend Popeye, or Popeye and Me. Sometimes titles are like that. Popeye and Me.
I absolutely love it. I would buy that book in a heartbeat, especially if it had your name on it. This has been a blast, as it always is. It's an absolute pleasure to spend any time with you, every time with you. Um, so thank you for being my partner in this. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for teaching me. I now have post-it notes of things that I get to go and do some deep dives in. For those that are listening, we will add some links at the bottom of this, and go take some personality traits. Go take the Freudian 8 and the Ocean Test, and see where you sit and comment. Let us know where you are. Uh, and with that, we will see you all next week with a brand new topic and a brand new sense of thought with new versions of ourselves.
Thank you, Adam. Talk to you
Thank,
later.
thank you, Jeanette.